Hello and welcome to another edition of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we talk everything about Christian theology books, perhaps books that might be on your bachelor's or master's reading lists, or books that have wound their way onto your minister's bookshelf. And today we're going to talk particularly about an author, fairly profound author, we will go into that in just a moment. But just to say, if you do like what I'm saying in these short 10-minute videos, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube, please subscribe and click on the bell, and that will help the algorithm in YouTube make us a little bit more popular. So thank you very much indeed for your cooperation. Today I want to talk to you about Ben Witherington III. I think it might help if I say how I came across him, in that whilst I was doing my master's degree and I was doing a module on Luke Acts, I had a couple of commentaries on Luke and I had nothing on Acts, and I wanted something, and I went to this little Christian bookshop, if you're watching this in America, then please understand, in Britain we have very little in the way of Christian bookshops, but this particular one had a single commentary on the Acts of the Apostles, but it was a fairly juicy one. It was something like 850 pages, and it was called The Acts of the Apostles, a socio-rhetorical commentary by Ben Witherington III. So I went back to my study room and I started work on this, and I thought, well, I really like this. Why haven't I heard of this man? Why haven't my lecturers recommended him? And so I spoke to the guy who'd given us a brilliant course on Luke Acts, who was an absolutely brilliant lecturer. And I said to him, what do you know about Ben Witherington III? And he said, nothing, never heard of him. And so I had to do a bit of research, and I discovered that he was from a Methodist background, American Methodist background, but that he'd done some of his study in the UK and had lived in the UK for a while. And everything I read in this commentary made me feel like this man was speaking from my point of view, or speaking from a point of view that made me feel very, very comfortable indeed. I mean, when you're reading commentaries or reading any Christian book, you know, I'm very surprised if I read something and agree with it all. I think the question is can you agree with anything? You know, I mean, most people will write their opinions and their viewpoints from their ideas that they're working from, and it may be different to yours if you yourself are a thinker. And sometimes you'll read a page and think, don't agree with that. Next page you'll say, do agree with that. Well, with Ben Witherington, I, as a sort of coming from a card-carrying Pentecostal background, very much involved in the new church movement in the UK for the last sort of 40 years. And that sort of background in me really meshed with Ben Witherington. And so I kept his name down, written down in my book. If you see any more, maybe get something else. But this book has really been the most used commentary in my library on the Book of Acts, even though I've got Craig Keener's 4 volumes, which have really become now my go-to commentary for Acts. But Ben Witherington has still got something to say. And if you look at the spine on that, you'll realise with what grace I treat my books. Watch your books. Always look after them. So, Ben Witherington, it became clear to me, was writing a series of commentaries in this socio-rhetorical style, which is a definite different style. And he'd written a number of good ones, the Gospel of Mark, and I have to say this commentary is excellent. It really is a brilliant commentary. And with, again, 450, 460 pages, it's good. It's got a substantial bibliography. It has a lot of notes. It is a worthwhile purchase. And He has a socio-rhetorical commentary on 1st and 2nd Corinthians, which is called Conflict and Community in Corinth. And again, that's very good. Again, Ben Witherington is very understanding of the gifts of the Spirit. He has a good view, and I like what he says. He has a number of these other socio-rhetorical commentaries. I like, for example, this one on 1st and 2nd Peter, which is a really good commentary on Peter's epistles. It is well worth a view. This particular one, I managed to get it hardbound. Most of them, I've managed to only get them paperback, but they're good. The only other commentary of this that I really particularly want to point out is this one, which is part of the new Cambridge Bible commentaries, and it's the one on Revelation. Now, there are some weird people out there who have weird ideas about Revelation, and let's be fair about it, Revelation does lend itself quite easily to weird ideas. But this book is a very balanced, well thought through commentary, and I thoroughly recommend it to you. It's not perhaps my ultimate favourite, which would probably be Gordon Fee's commentary in the NCCS series, but this is seriously a good commentary. It's one to read up there. And, you know, I always say having one commentary is never enough. I probably would like to sort of think about 5 commentaries that I would look at when I was studying any book, but this would definitely be one of the 5 for me in Revelation. He has fairly recently written a couple of fictional books. And when I say fictional, they have a real theological significance, because whereas the content is fiction, it's based upon real characters and real incidents. And this is a series that a number of people have contributed to, but Ben has written 2 of them, and this one is A Week in the Fall of Jerusalem. And it starts off, you meet people you may find you know, and they are leaving Jerusalem, and of course Jerusalem is about to fall. And it's very interesting, because what Ben does is he packs this fiction full of real events, and he covers this fictional world that he's creating with the fabric of history, which one cannot really deny. And I found this very helpful. In fact, the series is very good indeed, but this one of the whole series, actually, I would suggest is the one to read first. It's an excellent one. He's written a number of more general theology books, of which this is one, New Testament History and Narrative Account. And this again is one to dip into. It's really interesting. And I've never been, since my school days where my history teacher was dead boring, I have never really been focused on history. But you read a book like this and you think, yeah, I could get more into history. But it's a good book. And it offers us good chapter titles on specific ideas that we can follow up, a worthwhile read. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on Ben Witherington today, but I just want to point out one book that you can't buy in hardback or paperback. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, you can only buy it in Kindle format, which I did. And if I had my Kindle in front of me, I could wave it at you. But this book is one of the most profound that has been written in that sphere of theodicy, suffering, and dealing with issues of life and death. Ben Witherington and his wife Anne, they had lost a daughter to cancer I think she was in her early 30s. But this book, I have to say, was like a breath of fresh air to me. When I read it, I thought, now this is written by someone who has genuinely been through what I myself have been through. I lost a son when he was 7 years old to cancer. And I thought, this man actually understands where I'm coming from. Now, my master's thesis was a little bit on this direction itself. And I just found, in reading this, I just thought, wow, I wish I'd read this before I'd written my thesis, because I found Ben coming at the problems in very much the same way that I myself did. The book is called When a Daughter Dies, Walking the Way of Grace in the Midst of Our Grief. And this is not an academic book, because it's not an academic subject. This is a where the rubber hits the road subject. But just to give you a few titles of the chapters, which this is a book you can sit and read in an evening. It's not a long book. But it's, for example, was this God's will? Is one chapter. Now, just asking that question tells you a bit about his theology. And some people might cross themselves and dab themselves with holy water for having asked that question. But it is a valuable question, and I think Ben gives a very good answer to it. Comforting words that are simply not true. Now, that is just, I find, the experience of almost everybody that has lost a dear one, is someone has come up to them and said something stupid. Like, they're in a better place now, which, you know, if we're Christians and we believe people go into paradise, I suppose the place is better. But when someone has just lost their loved one, you're sort of saying to them, well, it isn't a good enough place for them to be in your arms right now. And it's a hurtful thing to say. And that's one of those issues that Ben works through. And a fabulous title of one chapter is What Good Grief Looks Like. Play on words here. You know, we speak about good grief, but actually he's saying there is such a thing as good grief, and he explains what that looks like. So this is an excellent book. At the moment when I'm recording this, it's £6.58 on Kindle. It'll be the best £6.58 you've ever spent. And if you, like me, are a bit of a student of issues of theodicy and grief and suffering and death, if you want to look at this, I would suggest this book is not just a worthwhile read. I would suggest to you it's an essential read. And it must have broken his heart writing it, but it is there for us all to dig into, and it really speaks to us today. So when I wrote my book a decade ago, At Least It's Not Raining, which dealt with the issues I faced about my son's death, and like I say on the cover, I recognise that God got some very bad press, and that when children die, and I wanted to try and readdress that, which I think I've done to a great degree in this. When I look at what Ben's written, it is simply better than what I've written, and I do think that it's a great book to connect with. So that's Ben Witherington III, a great voice in modern theology, fairly prolific commentator and writer, someone who, if you see his name on the spine of a book, it's definitely worth taking off the shelf. And I'd like to leave that with you today. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please click on the thumbs up. Please click on subscribe and click on the bell, and we'll let you know as soon as another edition of Pastor's Library is released. Okay, thank you. Bye.